Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Inspiration Podcast with Stan. Got a great show today. Got my good friend, Brent Long, and Brent is the author of The Greatest Sales Question Never Asked. He's an authority on revenue building. He works with organizations and with firms across the United States, helping 2x, 3x, 4x their revenue based on, of all things, biblical principles. It's a system that's really crushing it right now, and he intrigued me when we first started talking about this, and I thought, boy, this is going to be a great podcast, especially for those of you that are looking to grow your business. Hey, but before we get started, as an author, speaker, as a podcast host, and now a mastermind host, I'm launching something called the Resilience Lab. And again, it's something that I think I'm going to talk about more at the end of the show. And if you have interest in co-elevating, if you have interest in networking and being with other like-minded leaders in a psychologically safe place, I have something that I think you're going to be interested in. This is something that people have been asking me for. And so we're going to start to roll this out. And if this sounds like a fit, hey, hang around after the show and I want to talk to you a little bit more about it. But anyway, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started today. I want to introduce you again to Brent Long. I think you're going to enjoy this. So let's go ahead and let's get this party started. Hey, I'm Stan Gibson, and this is the Inspiration Podcast. Let's get to it. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Inspiration Podcast with Stan. Hey, I'm your host. Hey, I'm already in season 2, my friends, and thanks for bolting us to the top of the Apple charts. That's pretty awesome, and I couldn't do it without you. So thank you for listening. You know, those of you that have listened, you know that this podcast is about authenticity. It's about leadership in a new world that really doesn't conform anymore. We openly dive into the messy middle, the imposter syndrome, and any of the discussions around real growth and where it happens, but really where nobody wants to talk about. So as you know, each episode I discuss the neuroscience of well-being, emotional intelligence, which, by the way, I think is the foundation for leadership going forward, and the tools and systems that really all of you need to survive, personally, professionally. So hey, let's pull back the curtain, grab your favorite drink, get comfortable. Hey, let's jump into a conversation and let's get this started with my good friend, Brent Long. Brent, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Stan. Thanks so much for having me on.
Well, I tell you what, for those of you that are tuning in and listening, I tell you what, Brent and I met probably, 3 or 4 months ago. And we just kind of had a kindred spirit in a lot of ways. And you're going to learn a lot today. I don't do bios very well. It's just not my jam. I don't think that people listen to bios a lot, but I will say this. We're going to talk today about the fact that Brent is an author of The Greatest Sales Question Ever Asked. We're going to talk a little bit about his time playing football for the Ohio State University, which is tough for an Illinois fan to be able to really kind of stomach. But no, I have the utmost respect for the Buckeyes. I really do. And we're going to talk a lot about the fact that Brent is what I would call a revenue whisperer. He goes into companies as a sales coach, and he has principles that are very, very unique because they're built on biblical principles. And so we're going to talk a lot about that, but you don't want to hear me talk about it. You want to hear Brent. Brent, my friend, what did I mess up there? Other than the fact in your, in your bio, I think it said, do you and your wife have 14 kids?
Yes, absolutely we do. It's a crazy, crazy story. But my wife and I literally have a combined 14 children. I was a single dad of 7. She was a single mom of 7. And we got married 11 years after we met, the day after we met. So yes. So we have 14 adult children scattered across the United States from Seattle to Brooklyn.
So do you have to rent out like a small convention center or something for Thanksgiving or Christmas? I mean, how do you convene all these kids, and now I guess from what I read, 5 grandkids? How does the get together work?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. We give our adult children lots of freedom without a lot of requirements, and so we have yet to get everybody together at one single time since we have blended the families together. They've met each other in small groups, in small pockets, but they've never officially met all 14 at the same time. Plus now we have 4 or 5 significant others by marriage that are involved in that. And the grandkids are coming. And, Stan, you'll probably appreciate this, but one of the things that I do on a semi-regular basis is I'm trying to bribe my children to have more grandkids,
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. So it's one, Grandpa, Papa needs somebody to go fishing with.
I get you totally, brother. I'm Grandstand, and that's my given name to my two 3.5-year-old twin grandsons. And so you're right. We're in a season of life, my friend. It just couldn't get much better, unless there were more grandkids. And again, that's
Yeah,
the beauty of being able to go home and come over and spoil them. So that's cool. But
absolutely.
let's go in because you and I both have, we probably got 3-4 decades, I guess, of experience. But if we really want to kind of tease the audience here a little bit, let's go back. Yeah, we have so much in common because we both grew up on the farm. We both worked our tails off. We
Hmm.
both had aspirations to go play college football. I think the only aspiration I didn't have was to be a male dancer, which we'll get into in a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
And but take me back to kind of your evolution because again, you have this phenomenal consulting practice that spans the country, and I want to get to that, but we got to start somewhere at the beginning of how did you evolve into that, Brent?
Yeah, no, great question. So, like you, Stan, grew up on a farm. Hard work was not a cuss word. We got up, we embraced the day. I tell people that, for the most part, the way that I was raised is you work hard, you play hard, you eat hard so that you can sleep hard, right? So like everything was hard because you had to put forth the effort. And I got, older brothers, older sisters, things like that. So I was beat up a lot when I was young. But that made me a lot stronger and a lot, very, very physical. And I had this plan that, my escape from the farm, because I really didn't want to shovel pig manure for the rest of my life or cow manure for the rest of my life. My escape from the farm, so to speak, was I was going to become very, very, very good at football. And I became fairly good at football. And so that was kind of the impetus, is that you put forth effort, and I learned very early on that effort was looked upon with great favor by God. Like there was a lot of spiritual teaching in my upbringing, a lot of faith, but it was what I would call, what my dad taught me, was very practical faith, meaning everything that is spiritual fits inside of a circle, and everything in that circle is also very practical.
Yeah.
Meaning, if you're going to do something, then you do it with gusto, and if you make a mistake, don't leave any doubt.
Wow. No, that makes a lot of sense. So yeah, I know you had again, it sounds like, in your book, and again, we do want to hit on,
Mhm.
your book because I know that you're on a a tour,
Yeah,
promoting the book and signing it, the greatest sales question ever asked. We can talk about that, but I know that, some of the first pages talks about, you working on the farm as a kid, being 20 degrees below zero and having
mhm.
to, carry water and, take care of the pigs and et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, you had the same motivation I did, my friend. I can still remember in a hot, soupy hog lot, just saying, "What is it gonna take for me to wear a white shirt Sunday? It's all I want." And I
Yeah.
didn't care what I made. I just knew I wasn't gonna be in a hog lot. So tell me, so you graduated, so you went from the pig farm, and let's just quickly hit into a little bit of your football, capabilities and,
Mhm.
playing at the OSU.
Sure. Well, I tell people there's two main reasons why I never saw the field at Ohio State, right? Two main reasons. Because the real story, the full story is I never made it onto the field. And the two main reasons are I lacked a lot of talent and I lacked a lot of spine. Right? I tell people there's two main lacks. I lack talent and I lack spine. The real story, Stan, is when I was 13 years old, I was very involved in gymnastics and football at the same time. Farm kid, very physically strong. I mastered the use of my body and control of body. So I became pretty decent at gymnastics early on. I could do flips off the miniature trampoline. I could do all kinds of floor exercises, very, very flexible. But I fell one day in gymnastics and landed on the back of my neck, and I snapped a vertebrae in my lower spine.
Ooh.
Took me about 3.5 months to learn how to walk again. My legs get underneath of me, but in my brain, it's just pain. So you work hard, you work through the pain, right? And if you embrace the pain and you start healing because of the pain, pretty soon, I never missed a football season, but I had a crack in my vertebrae. So fast forward all the way through high school, every week, 2 or 3 times a week in high school, I was at the doctor getting treatments on my spine. But all that to say is I still was good enough to get recruited to a few places. I really wanted to play at Ohio State. I decided to have back surgery my freshman year because I literally broke my spine all the way in, all the way off. So I broke my fourth lumbar vertebrae loose from my spine. And so instead of going to college to play football as a freshman in college, 19-year-old, very, very built, very physically strong, I spent 4.5 months staring at a ceiling. And that was the beginning of the journey of, I believe, in my heart of hearts, I believe God changing the perspective of what I was going to bring out later in life.
Great segue.
So,
Let's go there. Let's keep moving on that.
yeah.
That's very interesting.
Yeah. So and I write about this a little bit in the book, but I was supposed to be in bed for 6 months. I lasted 4.5 months. If I put a big brace on that came, above my knees and under my arms kind of thing, if I put that on and bound myself up, I was allowed to stand up for a total of 15 minutes a day. Right? But I had to be in bed in a prone position for 6 months. I lasted 4.5 months. I'm pretty convincing. I think I had some sales ability at that point in my life because I convinced a couple of my high school buddies who were brokenhearted over my lack of ability to play football any longer, right? Come pick me up at the farmhouse. I got to get out of here. I'm going nuts. My parents are gone for the weekend. Please come pick me up. And I convinced them to come get me. They shoved me in a car with my back brace on. We went to watch some canoe races. I got hit by a car.
Oh my goodness.
The day that I got out of bed, which I was supposed to be in bed for 6 months, I got out of bed at 4.5 months. That day, I got hit by a car as a pedestrian. And I landed on my spine, on my back, in the middle of the road. So surgery number 2 is coming. We just don't know when. And I had to wait 1 full year, Stan. I had to go through the mental gymnastics and the emotional turmoil and the physical pain of waiting a full year so that the bones in my spine that they just put in could harden enough that they could go back in and cut them back out without damaging anything else. So I had to wait 1 full year, and that was surgery number 2. And by surgery number 2, I kind of became somebody that I didn't want to be. I didn't know it at the time, but I kind of became somebody who was going to take matters into his own hands, do his own thing, defy the odds, not listen to the doctors, get right back in the gym. I was going to continue to play football. I literally played football after 2 back surgeries with no pads on, and in one day put 2 people in a hospital.
Wow.
That I was probably so driven to reclaim my identity of who I thought
Sure.
I was and who I thought I was supposed to be. I was probably so driven that I was willing to do any extreme action of any kind to prove that I was still that person that I thought I was and everybody else thought I was.
So you talk about the mental gymnastics. Yeah, that had to be pretty challenging over a couple of years. I mean, because you can easily go, why me?
Mm-hmm.
Or I guess you could take another avenue of why not me. Tell me a little bit about that. And by the way, I just went through probably about a month and a half study on the book of Job. And so, yeah, a lot of the same mental gymnastics that
Yeah.
we went through of trying to figure out why me. Yeah,
Yeah.
what do you got against me, God? And yet, tell me a little bit about those mental gymnastics and how you got through that.
Oh, it's great. I mean, quite honestly, it was a blessing because the only thing that I could do was stare at a ceiling, literally laid on my back 24 hours a day at the farmhouse in a hospital bed, staring at a ceiling. So when the pain got bad, when I got frustrated, it was like, how am I going to get out of this? And you come to a point where in some ways, Stan, I was so defeated, but every time I was so defeated, I was blessed or given favor with new ideas or creativity or certain things that I couldn't do, right? I can say now that selfishly, I was on a path to make myself known But I came to grips with the fact that God made me in such a way that I am to build and coach other individuals up, right? And so he had to change that aspect of my heart. And so those mental gymnastics, going from being a victim to nope, I'm the one who got out of bed. It's my fault. If I had not got out of bed, I would not have been hit by a car, right? I had to make all those changes. Now, I didn't do that perfectly, but over the course of time, I was able to do that to become the son that I never was before all this happened. And
And
I tell people now that probably the last 15 to 20 years of my life, I have learned how to become a son of God. Because I'm
that's
very
it's
familiar with his voice. I'm very familiar with his voice. I'm very familiar with how he interacts with me. I'm very familiar with how he gets my attention because there's certain things that I just can't I can't do anymore. I can't shoulder all the burdens of the world anymore because I don't have a spine. I mean, my spine's weaker than it used to be. So it gets my attention much faster.
so you took accountability. You took
Yeah,
extreme
absolutely.
accountability.
Took accountability. It's my fault. I'm the one who got out of bed. I'm the one who used my persuasive skills to call my friends and convince them to drive 10 miles across the country, across the county to my farmhouse to pick me up. Everything is going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine. I didn't know that standing on a corner, I would get hit by a car pulling a trailer full of canoes. But if I had not put myself in that position, that would not have happened. So if I want to heal from that, right? If I really want to heal from that, I'm the common denominator,
So
you know?
so so let's move forward a little bit here into so you're still a part of the Ohio State University football team. You found a
Yeah.
way to make that happen, along with a way to put yourself through college. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So very entrepreneurially minded. Fortunately for me, my brain was still functioning for the most part. I mean, in some ways, maybe not great, but in some ways, I did everything that I could to generate revenue. I didn't really get, I'm a student coach now, student manager now, instead of an athlete, but still athletic. So I'm working with Coach Bruce. I ended up working with Coach Cooper, but I was also back in really good shape. So, when you're laying in bed, when you're 100 and 200 pounds and you're built like a football player, right? And 4.5 months later, you get out of bed, you're 160 pounds. For a 19-year-old to have to do that twice in a year and a half, like that just messes with you, right? So I got myself built back up. I was built back up. I looked like a bodybuilder, whatever. And I thought, hey, I bet I can make some money by being a male dancer. And I started funding college because I could get contracts, private parties, all kinds of stuff, open venues. And I was literally paying for college, getting paid 800 to 1,000 bucks a night at times. I mean, it's
You're
crazy. It's
making good
crazy.
jack, brother. You're making
Yeah,
good.
it's crazy. To the point where I auditioned for and got accepted into a traveling group of male dancers that had come to Columbus, Ohio back in the late 80s. And at the end of this month, they offered me a contract to travel with them around the country. And that's when it hit. It's like, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing? Is this what I have built my life to do? Is to travel with these guys? Stan, all of these little things are amazing now. You know why they wanted me to travel with them? Because they said I was a man of integrity. And why would they say some guy who's willing to stand up and be a male dancer, right? Why is that guy a man of integrity? Because they watched me interact when I was doing it before, and they, out of 30 some people that were doing this, they hand selected me to handle all of the money. And they said, because we know we can trust you, because we know you can be trusted with it. So you, as a man of integrity, we want you to travel with us because we want you to start handling our business and our money.
So this point in the story, 'cause again, so in the book, and again, I do recommend everybody that is listening to this to order a copy of The Greatest Sales Question Never Asked. And again, it's Brent Long and who we have on today in the author. This is an amazing story because even while you're the manager, the team manager, you have aspirations of really being an agent for a lot of these players. and you obviously have good people skills. You're jacked. You're kind of into your first array of sales.
Mhm.
So how did that go? Because it also sounds from the book like the sales thing looked pretty sexy until it wasn't. So give us a little background there.
Yeah, and when you're scrappy, you understand this, Stan. When you're scrappy, when not everything comes easy, you kind of have to scrap for things, right? Well, out of when I left Ohio State, my first career job truly was in the athletic world. I was becoming a sports agent. I was getting certified with the NFL Players Association. I had literally been trained by two Hall of Fame college football coaches how to coach. I coached 2 years of high school football while I was having my back surgeries and recovering. Okay. So when I got to Ohio State, I got my varsity letter in football from Ohio State, but I was preparing myself for that next phase. Right. And the next phase to me was I want to stay in the athletic world and make a name for myself in the athletic world. And I can do that because I know how to develop people because that's what I was taught at Ohio State. Well, I became the director of marketing services for a sports agency that used to be located here in Columbus, Ohio. And the director of marketing services meant I was in charge of every sales and marketing effort off the field. We had 15 NFL players under full contracts, and I had another 55 athletes that we signed to marketing deals, which means I was in charge of shoe contracts. I was in charge of product endorsements, autograph signings, speaking engagements, Diet Coke commercials, everything you can possibly imagine that goes along with that. And we started to prepare these athletes for life after athletics, real estate investment, building restaurants, anything like that. And I started to see, wait a minute, I'm probably too young and immature to be a sports agent, but these people are listening to counsel from me about how to generate revenue from a marketing and sales aspect as it relates to their own entity, their own business. And some of those relationships, almost 40 years later, Stan, are still in existence. There's people who have been retired from the NFL for a very, very long time who have been clients of mine. There are college football coaches at Division I level who became clients of mine in my coaching business as it relates to business in the marketplace. It it baffles me. I didn't even know I had talent in that area. Like it
But you
took it took it
evolved.
took many years. It took many years of my own personal coaches and my own personal mentors to convince me that I was even good at it. Because I was still trying to drive myself to be I was still recovering from my back surgeries and mentally.
Yeah. And your dad, it sounds like, wasn't a keen or advocate for the sales profession.
Not at all. Not at all. I mean, the first job after my second surgery, the first job I got, you know, I can't physically shovel manure every day of my life anymore. I got to get a job. I got to pay for college. The first job that I got after my second back surgery in 1985 was a sales job, going door to door. I was I wasn't proud of it, but at least I got a job. And I came home and I presented that to my dad. Dad, I got a job today. Great, son. What kind of a job did you get? I got a job in sales selling. I never finished the sentence. I got a job in sales and I will be selling. And he said, that's good, son. Maybe someday you'll get a real job. That was how he received it because and I understand that was his frame of reference. The only quote unquote salespeople that we really ever interacted with was the farm implement dealer who was a friend. So it didn't feel like sales, and the seed salesperson who sold us all the seed that we were using to plant in the fields. You could have a conversation with those people while they sat in your car in your driveway. Right. And so for him, like, sales is not a real job. Sales is not a real thing. I mean, salespeople, we got to stay away from them. And that's how
So
it started for me.
now it started for you like that. And as I've read, the sales thing kind of got slimy for you. It just
Did.
put a bad taste in your mouth, which is really important to this conversation because of the spin you eventually put on it, and which is why
Mhm.
you are so successful today. Talk to us a little bit about, kind of that evolution from the start to how you kind of evolved into this really dynamic practice.
Sure. Yeah. Well, again, I'm a driven person. I want to get better. I want to get better, which means I've already accepted the idea of coaching. I'm an athlete. If I as an athlete want to get better, I'm going to allow somebody to coach me. So in various roles in sales, I went out and I looked at all the sales training that was available to me. And we're talking late 80s, early 90s, right? And the sales training that was available to me, I couldn't do it. It felt like, this is how I describe it. If I could have gotten paid raking leaves, I would have left the sales profession and gone out and raked leaves. That's kind of what it felt like, meaning I was exposed to all kinds of different sales systems, popular franchisee models, all kinds of stuff, right? They all sounded the same thing. They just used different words. And to me, it felt like they were all full of tips and techniques and manipulation of one form or another. Right. And so I often felt like, let alone the stereotypes of sales, I often felt like the training was actually contributing to the stereotypes of sales. Why doesn't anybody ever want to put sales on their business card? I'm an account manager. I'm not a salesperson. I'm a business development person. I'm not a salesperson. Well, what's wrong with sales? Right. And so I started on a journey of understanding what all the training of sales was available to me and how it made me feel like I needed to take a shower at the end of the day.
Mhm.
So I did the only thing that I knew how to do, Stan. It was the core focus of life at that time for me is, and it came from laying on a bed staring at a ceiling. God, how are we going to get through this? You're my only option. And so in the area of sales, I started to ask God for help. You got to help me. If this is my chosen profession, if I'm supposed to be good at this and I'm going to get better at this, God, you got to help. You have to help me somehow. Right. And that's when all the light bulbs went on. And I started studying scripture and taking notes, studying scripture, taking notes, studying scripture, taking notes. Here we are 30 years later.
So it sounds to me like you kind of landed on a key chapter in the Bible of John, the book of John.
Correct. Yep.
Is that where you landed? Because I think that that's what prompted you to be part of this, the greatest sales question ever asked. Can you tell me the linkage between those verses? Was it first book of John or was it fifth book of
No,
John?
just John, the Gospel of John.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So
Matthew, Mark, Luke,
talk to us
John.
a little bit
Yep.
about that.
Yeah. So let me back up just a little bit because there was some sin in my life involved in that, right?
Perfect.
And I
Okay.
write about this in the book, right? I mean, I was trying to figure all this out, but I wasn't necessarily doing it perfectly, and I wasn't always doing it well. But I was building a sales coaching training business, right? And at the same time, I was almost self-sabotaging my own reputation because I was buying into what was being taught. I was buying into the world's methodology on some of this stuff. And it was just, kind of made me feel a little bit slimy. And anyway, so without going into great detail, in that journey, I had some sin in my life and I went to talk to my pastor as a result, right? In talking to my pastor, he challenged me to reconsider why I was in the marketplace and the methodology of what I did to practice getting better in the marketplace, right? Well, about that time, I had only 4 kids at the time. So I hired 2 of my children to record for me by reading the Gospels every question that Jesus ever asked anybody in a direct conversation. I paid him $100. I gave him red letter versions of the Bible and different versions, right? One was King James, one NASB, ESV, NIV. And I said, look, Dad needs a tax write-off for contract labor. Will you read the Bible and write down every question that Jesus ever asked anybody in a direct conversation? So I have all those questions. And for almost 20 years, that's now the foundation, right? Well, while all this was going on, I was sabotaging my career until I went to talk to my pastor. The following week, my pastor is preaching on John chapter 5, and I'm writing notes because I'm trying to be a good Christian, in church. I'm writing notes and taking sermon notes, and I read all those notes on a Monday morning, And every note that I wrote down in my journal was marketplace language, marketplace leaning. Like, wait a minute. Jesus walked into a multitude of lame, blind, withered, and dumb, paralyzed. Sounds like he knows target marketing very, very well. Like, because the Old Testament talks about when he gets here, he's going to heal these kind of things. Well, he just walked into an entire physical area, right? Where a multitude of them were lame. He walked up to one guy. He could have healed them all. He walked up to one guy and said, do you want to be made well? Do you want to be healed? Do you want that problem to go away? Right? And in my life, like when I saw that, Stan, I'm just saying everything made sense. Everything made sense. Brent, you have to go through this in order to trust me to get you healed, because I am going to use you in the sales arena to heal teams and people and sales leaders and sales producers who have that same feeling of the stereotypical crap that they have to deal with as a salesperson. But we are going to bring them another solution. We're going to bring them another way to grow revenue and sleep very, very well at night. And I'm just saying, I don't think I had much input into it. I just think I was so desperate that I needed the help that I started begging God, and this is how he responded.
So if I'm jumping ahead too much, just let me know. But I know that in your methods, because again, you have a pretty thriving practice around the country, and so there's a lot of people, a lot of organizations that are obviously adopting biblically principled sales techniques. And I know that you've doubled, tripled, quadrupled revenue for most of your clients. Who's your ideal client? I mean, I know that having faith in the Bible and all that stuff, it gets highly politicized, and it's just an emotionally charged topic when it comes to business. So how are you operating? Is that your only client? Are entrepreneurs that have a similar faith, or does it go outside of that?
No, it actually goes outside of it, and quite honestly, I enjoy the mix, right? This is a story that I tell on a fairly regular basis, Stan. I had a former client. He was in the construction industry. He might have had a God orientation, but definitely not a follower of Christ, definitely not a believer, right? But he had a conversation with me. I was referred to him by several other people because he had a revenue generation problem. His construction company was functioning extremely well in all areas, except they should be at this level and they were going this direction. And so he took a chance and he brought me in. He said, now, I know that you're a man of faith and I'm not a man of faith, and I might have some questions for you along the way. And I just interrupted him. And I said, look, I am not in the salvation business. That is not my business at all. I am in the behavior change business, and I believe that we can get the revenue generating behavior of your company changed if we look at some different examples along the way. So about 35% of my clients are not followers of Christ. I love that because I'm literally pointing them to true north, right? And the idea is sales is one of those things where behavior is aligned with belief. So if we believe something, you should see resulting behavior. Well, that sounds a lot like faith to me, right? The practice of faith then becomes very, very tangible. If you believe that you should say something on a sales call, do you have the behavioral practice at a level where you can execute what you believe you should execute? Or do you need to practice? We all need practice. So I've taken the concepts and turned it into sales is a lot like football. You can't get better reading a book. You got to put the pads on. You got to practice. You got to test it. So if you don't care enough, then we'll work on your heart. If you do care enough, we work on the behavior. And that's the model that I've taken to the marketplace, which means it fits into whoever I come in contact with, because my ideal clients are those small business, could be a startup, could be mom and pop shop wanting to grow, could be a $5 billion company that has a division they're trying to get better and they just want to practice, right? So all that to say is if they're willing to embrace some truth about examples, not from an overly spiritual standpoint, but from a very practical standpoint, then the questions that Jesus asked and the way that he asked them are they're teaching questions. Like if you take all the questions that Jesus asked and you boil them down and look at the similarities, those questions are very salty.
Yeah.
Very
So
salty.
great segue, because you do use a couple of acronyms in your book. One is sales, the other one is salty.
Mhm.
Tell us about which one do you want to start with first?
Sales. Let's look at the industry first. Sales, right? So people are fairly decent about building relationships. We can build relationships and we can do that fairly well, and we kind of know where we are in the relationship, right? But for some reason, if you're building a relationship fundamentally well and you add a dollar sign to it, everybody freaks out. Like, why do you freak out? It's just a dollar sign. Okay. Well, because now there's something riding on that relationship. Well, isn't there something riding on the relationship ahead of time? So one of the things that I've done is kind of go into look at the concept of sales, break it down into behaviors, and then redefine the industry. Sales is an acronym. We are going to seek people who have problems and goals, that's easy to find. People who have problems and goals that's very easy to find. So we're going to become a seeker of people who have problems and goals, and we're going to ask them really, really good questions. And we are going to shut up and listen to those questions. So seek, ask, listen, so that we can be excellent in our delivery of a solution or point them in a proper direction. And in order to solidify the relationship, seek, ask, listen, excel, solidify. That's sales. That's redefining the industry. You mean I should actually care about the people that I'm trying to sell to? Yeah, you probably should. That would help a little bit. We can work on that. But at least you got to do something proactive to seek those people. By the way, marketing and sales, marketing messaging must line up with sales behavior, and sales behavior must line up with marketing messaging. Old Testament, New Testament. I want you to think about that. Marketing message, Old Testament, you got a problem, come do business with me. Well, I'm going to wait for the sales guy to show up. So, sales guy shows up, he's behaving the Old Testament message. Duh, right? So that's sales. Now, if you look at all the questions that Jesus ever asked anybody in direct conversation, there are 5 main characteristics that stand out to every question. And they're all summed up in the greatest sales question ever asked. They're salty, straightforward, very simple, easy to understand, not confusing. They're aimed at the heart, not the head. He's not asking you what you think about it. He's asking you what you believe. They are leading to a known solution. The person asking the question is standing in front of you, sir. The person who has the solution is the one asking the question standing in front of you. Do you want to be made well? I have the power to do that. That's why I'm asking. I'm not playing games, but I'm leading you and pointing you directly to a solution. And oftentimes he or she who asks the best questions is the best solution standing in front of the prospect. See, we know this, we just don't practice it. Okay, so that's leading. T, timely. This person had been an invalid for 38 years with no chance of healing. It was the Sabbath. That's a very, very urgent time period day for this guy. We know it was the Sabbath because he later once he was healed, he got up and walked to the temple where he can worship for the first time. Is the problem that they're dealing with preventing them from doing something else in a timely manner that they would rather be doing? Right? That's the T. And then why? And the why is where most salespeople fail. The why stands for yielding. So straightforward, aimed at the heart, leading them to a known solution in a timely fashion that produces a yield, a result. We should see people coming towards us or going away from us when we ask really good questions. Because we should be asking questions that separate out those who are committed to solving a problem and those who kind of sort of like to be victims and talk about it for the next 30 years. And salespeople who are not salty enough often have their prospects get stuck. The pipeline fills up, but nothing ever drips through because they're not dealing with a commitment level based conversation. And so their prospects can't make a commitment because the questions are not salty enough.
So your company is called Long On Life, just for the
Yep.
listeners here. And I want to talk just a little bit about this. So somebody's listening today, and who, who's the ideal person to say, I got to get a hold of Brent? Yeah, this is interesting. And if you would, like I said, I always believe in stories because there's
Yeah.
probably somebody out there that identifies with maybe one of your current clients who needs to say, you know what, I don't know that I totally understand this, but I got to get a hold of Brent. Who's that person? Who would that
Yeah.
be?
It's somebody right around the leadership of the sales department to the ownership suite, the CEO suite. That's the sweet spot, right? They have to see two things. They have to see the problems that they currently have in the sales department, but they have to also see the potential if those people could just be reoriented and tweaked just a little bit. We're not talking rocket science here, but we are talking coaching. So the story is, I'll apply it to football coaching or track coaching first, Dan. Okay. The track coach who really cares is not telling you to run faster. They're helping you pull your elbows in while you're running. We're not trying to change everything. We're trying to coach you through so that repetition is going to build better results. Okay. So the idea is there's a sales leader out there right now, 5 to 10 people, 25 people on their team, and they are so frustrated because they're probably babysitting 3 to 4 of those people, and they got high performers and they can't figure out how to close the gap between all that. And so they're trying to work to get that done. And most sales leaders are overcomplicating it instead of simplifying it. That's just the metrics that we're chasing, right? So a manufacturing company in Florida had a business owner who was very involved in the sales process, came to a 2.5-day boot camp that I taught, went back home, implemented everything that he was doing, right, that I taught him to do. And in 10 months, we doubled the size of the manufacturing output, the revenue, and what the plant was able to produce. The sales team started to push production for that plant because we changed the heart of service. We will not quit until we find one more person to serve today. And this is how we're going to serve them, by asking them really, really good questions that Brent taught us how to ask, the salty stuff, right? That company had 5 record years in a row in an industry that was disappearing. Okay. That would be an example. A construction company went from 3.5 million to almost 20 million, a little bit over 20 million in less than 5 years. They only had to hire one person, but we changed the way the revenue comes into door, right? And that would be an ideal client. Somebody who has the potential to grow, the desire to grow, the commitment to practice, and they just kind of want to banter some stuff around for a little bit until we find what the real root problem is.
So when you pop in on these, when you do these, this consulting, are there some people that
Mhm.
they're really not cut out for this, and there's some people that are. How do you
Yeah.
kind of qualify the right people to be in sales?
Great question. I have several assessment tools that I've built. I also partner with a brilliant man, just a wonderful guy, and his daughter in an online tool. But I do a pretty thorough assessment. I do a very thorough assessment, and the thorough assessment gives a thumbs up, a thumbs down. Like 3 weeks ago, I ran an assessment on 4 people from one company. And I told the ownership of that company, don't put this guy in. I don't want it. You're not going to get a return on his investment. And they said, so you're telling us that you don't want the money that we would be sending you for him being in the session. I said, look, I have a reputation to hold on to and a reputation to protect. I'm not going to coach him. I will not coach him. And I made that decision based on the assessment.
Yeah.
Okay. And so that would be a first step. There's an assessment process um, for a company. There's an assessment process for an individual, and both of those are like, you're going to the doctor because you think you might have a broken arm. Well, the doctor's probably going to take an X-ray and maybe run an MRI. That's your assessment. I'm going to find out how to treat this person. We're not doing something off the shelf. This isn't just the same for everybody. I'm coaching. Coaching has to happen from what I call a proximity standpoint. You got to be close enough to the people to coach them. So we start with an assessment to do that.
I see.
Yeah.
Brent, what are you working on? What's the part of your life that you say, you know what? Yeah, I've got success going, but we're all a work in progress. What are you working on?
I'm working on what I said alluded to a little bit earlier. I'm working on becoming a better son. Sonship to me is important, right? And so that's something that I'm very open to. I have a very, very deep faith, and in my deep faith, I am very open about my shortcomings. I demand accountability for my life. I've got several guys and my wife involved in an accountability board, and I open myself up to them on a regular basis, and I ask, I want you to pay attention to some stuff. I wrote an article about a couple months back as it related to the book, and somebody who is an avid reader of my posts and stuff like that, they sent me a reply and said, I think I was just exposed to some kind of bait and switch. Well, it's because they misunderstood something that was in the book. But what they don't know is that I took all that and I exposed myself to my accountability board. And I said, hey, this is what happened. You examine me. You examine my heart, my motives, examine the message. If there's anything in there that I did wrong, I want you to tell me all about it. And I have to go through that because I want to become a better son and a better follower, which means if I'm a better follower, then I can actually lead people well.
Kudos to you, my friend. Pride is, says it in Proverbs several times, but pride is one of those things that, gets in the way
Mm-hmm.
of taking criticism and accepting and growing. And I'm really, even with my clients, we talk a lot about a growth mindset. It sounds like you're perfectly aligned there in everything you do with a growth mindset, not only for your clients, but personally for yourself and your
Mm-hmm.
wife and everybody else. Tell me a little bit about the book, the journey you've been on. There is an MP4 that I looked at that shows you know how to throw a good party when when you launch a book, my friend. And I want to put that in the show notes. But tell us a little bit about the book, and especially how people can get a hold of it.
Yeah, yeah, it's great. The greatest sales question ever asked. Again, it wasn't my idea. As a fairly reluctant author. Last November, my wife came to me and lovingly confronted me, and it's in the video. She contributed at the book signing. She's got the last 4.5. Well, she's got the last 6.5 minutes of the video about the book signing. I just handed her the microphone because I knew she had a lot to offer. And one of the things that she said is, Brent was a little bit overwhelmed. He had 3 pretty big things going on, and he probably wasn't doing any of them very, very well, according to his standards. And he was somewhat frustrated. And so my wife came to me and said, you got to make a decision. You got to make a decision about what you're going to finish. And quite honestly, Brent, the book is going to outlive you. If you really want to serve people and you want to serve people well, Long on Life is going to go away. And Long Haven Retreat, the property that we live on, and we bring people here on a regular basis and offer them this property. My clients come in. All that to say is that's going to go away too. The book is your lasting impact on these people. You get everything in that book. You got to get your book finished, right? And so I heard her. I knuckled down. I finished the book. I was interviewed back in November. What do you hope the book will accomplish? And I said to the person who interviewed me, I said, if this book can help expand somebody's horizons and their potential in the world of sales and point them to Christ at the same point in time, if it only impacts one person, it will have been successful. And I can tell you right now, Stan, that much more than that is happening. I can't even begin to describe what is happening with the book at this point in time. Yeah. We have people that have sent me feedback on the book and said, as soon as they finished it, they bought 15 copies to send out to 15 different companies. I can't tell you how many times that's happened. So I don't care about being an award-winning author. I care about helping people become who God created them to be
Sounds
in
like you have
sales.
your ikigai, your Japanese term for reason for waking up in the morning.
There you
Sounds
go.
like you know who God called you to be, and I always ask
Yep.
people, who does God want you to be, and who does
Right.
He say you are? It sounds
Right.
like you've answered that. It sounds you've got a really good grasp on that, my friend.
Absolutely. And I'm very blessed in that area. My wife sometimes says she's a little bit jealous that I wake up every day with the same intentional focus on being the man that God created me to be. And I know very specifically what that looks like. It's a very narrow path. I don't want to be good at things that I don't have to be good at.
Yeah. So where can they find your book? I assume Amazon. Where else?
Yeah, you can find it on Amazon. You can order Barnes and Noble. There's an e-copy, a paperback copy. Barnes and Noble, Amazon. Book Baby. Book Baby is my publisher. It's a self-publishing group called Book Baby. You can go on bookbaby.com, find it there directly. Book Baby is the one supplying everybody else. So there you go. My website for the book is literally the greatest sales question ever asked.com. I mean, I'm not that creative. So, it's got to
Hey, it's
it's
not
got to be
taken.
pretty
You got to use.
yeah, right. So those are places to get the book. And then the nice thing about the book is it has QR codes. So if you're reading the book and you have questions, or if you want some content, you can actually scan the QR code and I'll send you the contact from that chapter.
Oh, fantastic. So, in kind of closing out here, so how often do you offer these boot camps and this way of getting to know you and your techniques better?
Yeah, great. So I teach a weekly sales class that has a 3-month minimum participation in it. So that's an ongoing every Thursday for 20 years, roughly, right? And we meet every week for that. And then when there are people, I will bring up a boot camp about every maybe once a quarter. We'll do a 1-day sales intensive. Now we can do overnight boot camps and stuff like that with our property as well. So we try to do
Fantastic.
that as a couple boot camps a year, a sales intensive about once a quarter, but we have the weekly class that meets all the time. So people are always coming in and going out of the weekly class.
Great. So if people want to, they can go to the book, The Greatest Sales Question Ever Asked.com. How
Yep.
else would they get in touch with you, Brent?
There's a link directly from that website to the Long on Life website, longonlife.net, longonlife.com websites. And there's all kinds of forms on those pages. If they have specific questions, they can fill something out and it'll come directly to my assistant and then we'll get it processed for them. So,
Fantastic. Fantastic. Any final word? Anything you want to leave the audience with today, Brent?
well, Stan, I don't know if it's much about the audience. I know they're listening in, but this is probably just between you and me. I just want you to know how much of an encourager you are, right? You have an ability to lift people and encourage people in a very special way. And I felt that the first time we met. I'm very glad that we got introduced, and I'm really glad that we were able to connect. I just want you to know that it's real. That you've been through some hard times here recently with some family stuff. I have as well, but I knew when I talked to you even today, I knew that there would be encouragement in that conversation, and I just
Oh,
wanted to call that out.
well, you bring a tear to my eye, and so I appreciate that. And thank you for using the word encourager. I've done a lot of self-reflection over the
Mhm.
past year too. Who does God say I am? And if you're familiar with the Bible, and I realize not, I don't try to make this podcast all about believe on what I believe, because I think there's a
Yeah,
lot of different beliefs out there. But I do know that I believe that God said I'm his Barnabas, and Barnabas
hmm
in the Bible was somebody who really encouraged everybody. I mean, he basically bridged gaps. There was always fighting amongst the disciples. You had to
yeah,
have somebody who could come in and encourage and kind of. So thank you for using the word encourager, because that's really one of the words that I've landed on in the past year, really where who I think God wants me to be. And that's why I think, like you, I've got some really great clients that have really trusted me. And so it's been a blessing. It's been a blessing to know you, my friend. This
mm,
is awesome. I really want the audience. I really want you to please go out, get the greatest sales question ever asked. I do know because I've got some clients that are struggling right now with sales and with revenue. And if you've been doing the same thing over and over again and you're not getting results, then it's time to at least explore. You don't have to sign up for anything. Just explore.
yeah,
Just say, hey, okay, here's a new guy that I can can pick up the phone or I can go to this, the greatest sales question ever asked.com. Just get the process started. So, Brent, I thank
There
you,
you go.
brother. Man, this has been an awesome, awesome time. And if I could ever do anything for you, please let me know. I want to say thank you for joining us today. I want to say thank you for those that have listened. I hope you've taken a nugget or two from today's discussion to learn more about Brent, to learn more about me. And if you want to connect with me, hey, it's StanGibsonSpeaks.com. I'm not that original either. StanGibsonSpeaks.com. And I would love to have a conversation. I'm kicking off a really dynamic mastermind. It's going to be some very unique individuals, and we're going to go through 12 months of some very, very intentional and intensified type conversations about leadership. So if you have interest in that, again, reach out, StanGibsonSpeaks.com or Stan at StanGibsonSpeaks.com. Thank you, everybody. May you all live a rich and intentional life. Take care. We're out of here. Bye. Hope you enjoyed our episode today with Brent Long. What an amazing story. I tell you what, check out his book again, The Greatest Sales Question Ever Asked. He's a tremendous human being. The one thing I've always said about people that can help 2x, 3x revenue is, when there's a depression or a recession, everybody needs sales up. So it's recession proof. When things are good, you want good people that can come in 2x, 3x your revenue. So there's always value in someone who can build on revenue and work with your sales team. And again, given a lot of today's, political context, especially around, faith-based beliefs, this might be your jam. This might be something that you say, you know what? Hey, we want to take on a little bit more of that persona in the way that we work with our clients, in the way that we prospect. And so I'll tell you what, again, maybe just go on and look at that book again, The Greatest Sales Question Ever Asked. And if you like what you're hearing, and if you like these episodes, you like what we're talking about on the Inspiration Podcast with Stan, I'm also starting a mastermind, and this is going to be a very unique chemistry of entrepreneurs and executives. And this is something I think that you're going to be really interested in. If it stokes your interest, I really want you to go to leadwithstan.com, leadwithstan.com. And I want you to check this out, because I tell you what you're going to find out. You're going to find that there is no better feeling, no better experience than having 15 other entrepreneurs and executives in the room or on the phone. That just multiplies the number of relationships, the number of connections, the amount of wisdom, the amount of experiences. And when you've got the right chemistry and the right people, and they all have a lot of the same things that they're working towards, a great culture, better emotional intelligence, better teams, better productivity. How do they keep their teams from getting gassed? How do they scale? How do they leave a legacy? Leaders today are faced with more challenges than ever before. And we're going to talk about them. And you're going to meet some of your new best friends that are really, really wise and very unique when it comes to their leadership at high levels, or just their ability to be an entrepreneur. So again, it's leadwithstan.com, leadwithstan.com. Check it out. Give me a call. Let's talk about it. See if it's a fit for you. And, it's a two-way thing here. Let's see if this thing works. If it doesn't, we understand. But I want you to keep listening to the Inspiration Podcast with Stan. Take care. May you all live a rich and intentional life and have a wonderful week. Well, that's it for today, my friends. I hope this conversation sparked something meaningful for you. If it did, share it with someone who could use a little inspiration too. You can find more tools, stories, and coaching to support your journey at StanGibsonSpeaks.com.